Yes, I've been working, I'm an anthropologist, I'm a professor. And what happened about 30 years ago, and I'm going to turn over to a slide here, and you should have this in your hands to share, these barriers. Y'all have this okay? Yeah. Okay, I was in the anthropology department teaching 30 years ago, 25, 30 years ago, and the department chair asked me to come in every now and then he would tell me about these incidents similar to what you have on this sheet, and people from businesses, from schools, from counseling centers, from social services, from mental health services, all kinds of community groups where these kinds of relationships were happening. And so the long story short, I developed a training program to focus on communication and culture. And so this is what I'm going to demonstrate to you in the time that I have with you today. And we're going to use some of these case examples to demonstrate some of the tools that I've developed, communication and thinking tools, for dealing with incidents such as these and more. Before I begin that explanation and description, you all have a packet that looks like this? Okay, they're coming now. This packet summarizes the activities in my workbook. Now this handout has the tool, all four of the tools that I've developed. I call them 4 skills. And this is just for you to use if you're interested. It's just something, and the point is you have all the information that I will be talking about today, but I can't demonstrate it. Usually I present information and demonstrate it, but it takes a few hours to do that. So today I'm just going to introduce you to what's a possibility, and then you have all the information here in the packet. Okay, so now I'm going to skip over now with my slides and talk about these tools. And altogether I call these tools cultural mindedness and culturally centered communication. Okay, so let's first look at cultural mindedness in relation to these case examples that are on your handout that you're sharing and that is also up on the screen. Okay, so I'm going to go back now to just to introduce now some of these tools, and then we'll be analyzing these in regard to it. Okay, so going back to the beginning, here's what I call cultural mindedness. It combines cultural mindedness, or the way of thinking, and with these tools that I just mentioned that I'll go over, with interpersonal skills. The interpersonal skills is culturally centered communication, and I'll be talking about that, showing you in your packet what that's about. And then what they're about is for us to, it's the basis for culturally competent organizations, communities, and I hope our society. I mean, anthropologists have been working in diversity and culture issues for most of our existence, which is over 100 years. Okay, so let's look at this now. Here's culture mindedness. All I'm saying here is it's an inquiring way of thinking and keen interpretive skills. Remember when the former speaker talked about the duck versus the bunny rabbit? Yes, okay. So different perspectives, right? A duck and a bunny rabbit were in that picture, but it depends upon your perspective. Well, that's what also I see with cultural differences, because all humans are raised in cultures. The culture of your family, the culture of your community, the culture of your work site, the culture of your school. I mean, culture is everywhere, but we just might not think about it, okay? And I'm an anthropologist, and that's all we do is think about it, okay? Because we see it everywhere. And I hope to convey some of that mindedness, cultural mindedness, in the short time I have today. So this is cultural mindedness. Part of it is to see that culture, human ways of thinking, and human ways of behaving, these learned systems, and it is comprised of values and beliefs and norms. It's your group's meaning system that you're exposed to as we develop, as we grow up. And it absolutely relates to our language use, because that's where we get the words and the concepts for perceiving reality, okay? And then a lot of culture is invisible, and a lot of it is visible. That's what I'll just say for now, and then you can read this on your own. All of this, by the way, is learned. Humans learn their way of life. They're not born with it. We're born with the capacity to learn our entire life cycle, okay? It's also shared, such that human cultures, we see them in terms of patterns. We just had an event this last week, Halloween, in California, where I was raised. The kids would do trick-or-treating. I've raised 4 children and 2 grandchildren. And trick-or-treating is a big deal. Not with my kids now, because they're grown. But that is a custom, it's a pattern. I've lived in my neighborhood for 40 years, so it's something we've been doing. That's a pattern, that's our culture, that's our family culture, our community culture. Just to give you some examples of what I'm talking about here. So it's shared, it's pattern, and of course we want our children to learn it, and all human cultures try to teach their way of life to their children. That's the point that we see across the globe, in every human culture, past and present, because that is the subject matter that anthropology focuses on, is understanding humans, past and present, okay? So level 1, here's culture at the personal level, and each one of it develops a personal identity as we grow up. It's our meaning system. Okay, our identity or our sense of self is very much learned through interacting, and we form that given our capacities as we grow up, okay? Each one of these social groupings, our family, neighborhood, school, work, all of that influences our identity, our sense of ourself as a cultural person. Now what I want you to do, just to demonstrate, I don't have a lot of time to demonstrate these tools, but just to demonstrate culture at the personal level, if you would, take a minute and draw on your, any piece of paper that you have, even on the handout that you were given, the aspects of culture handout. Let me show you what I'm talking about. This one. Just use this and draw what is important to you. One picture, one sketch. But the point is, you do not draw words. This is something that you think for a minute. If you need to, close your eyes. What is important to you personally? And then an image should come up, and then draw a picture of it. I mean, you don't have to be an artist. I did this, and I'm no artist. Okay? A lot of people draw a sketch of stick figures for their family. A lot of people draw maybe a car to get an idea of something that's important to you personally. Please draw a picture of it for just the next 2 minutes, and then we'll talk about it for a second. Because what you're doing is you're drawing a part of your culture. What is important to you personally is a part of your personal culture. And culture operates at the personal level. Okay, you have some kind of a sketch. How many people drew stick figures for family? Raise your hand, or friends. Okay, so most people did. How many drew a picture of your house or where you live? Okay, so maybe 5, 6 of you did that one. How about any symbols of happiness or health? Any symbols? Okay. What are some other things that you drew? Oh, sports. How about sports figures or something related to sports? Anybody do that? Okay, maybe 4 of you. How about hobbies? Things you like to do when you have some time, if you have some time. It's hard these days. Okay, a few of you do that. Would anybody be willing to share what stick figure or image they drew?
Nature.
What's this?
Nature.
Nature, okay. That nature, absolutely. Nature, the environment, okay. How about yours, sir? The what?
A flag of my country.
A flag of your country, absolutely. Okay, there's another example. So you get the idea of drawing your personal culture is just one way to start opening that door to thinking about it. Because I know when I was growing up, I never thought about culture. It's when I was exposed to different cultures in Southern California. My ex-husband, I was married for 30 years to a Mexican-American from East LA. We have 4 children, and learning about Mexican-American culture was probably why I majored in anthropology when I went back to college, okay? Because I wanted to understand these differences that I was living and learning about. And that leads into the next level of culture, ethnicity, or culture of a particular group. Very much influences our identity or our sense of self, and other influences on us include our age, race, gender, ableness, physical appearance. These are the categories we can add to in relation to human diversity, and there's many more, okay? But just for presenting today's information, this is the description that I'll provide, okay? Ethnic group, this refers to the culture group, the culture that a group shares. And there is a tool that I've put in the packet, and it's called the aspects of culture. You see that? This aspects of culture. In your packet of information, on page 4 and 5 and 6, each aspect of culture is explained for you. Okay, this is from my workbook. And so here is what that means if you want to look at, let's see, it's pages 4 and 5 are the aspects of culture. Okay, now this is what we can use to think about human differences in regard to culture and the culture groups that we are exposed to, such as in those case examples that you have, and I haven't talked about yet. But these are cultural dynamics happening in these case examples. And we'll talk about this in just a minute. But first I want to look at aspects of culture. The explanation, as I said, is on page 4 and 5 in your packet. And let's look over here at these case examples for a minute. And can you, for just maybe 3 minutes, talk to people next to you and tell me, choose one of the case examples that is on this listing here. The first one, for example, this was happening at a social services agency, case number 1. In conversation among social service workers, a comment was made regarding an American Indian. That person looks about as American Indian as you, was the comment. The person, however, was an American Indian and was offended. All right, so just, I'm saying, and what I'm asking you to do with the persons next to you is choose one of these incidents that's on this list and tell me one aspect of culture you think would apply to that. Does anyone want to volunteer what they identified as an aspect of culture in any of these case examples here? Yes.
And I can speak Mandarin.
Thank you.
But again, I do apologize. I said I wish I could. Unfortunately, I'm kind of like the generation maybe here.
Sure.
And I just speak English.
Yeah.
And I was born in Indonesia.
Indonesia. Yes. Okay. And even if you did speak Mandarin, oftentimes by the 3rd generation here, those children are learning English. Hopefully they're bilingual. My children are not bilingual, I'm sorry to say, even though we tried. Some of them did take it in college, though, so they can be, my son is bilingual Spanish now. Anybody else identify an aspect of culture in this? And the aspect of culture would be language differences. And another aspect you could identify would be social group interaction, number 3. Okay, because it's a person probably from Euro-American culture dealing with someone Mexican-American or Latino, some Latino culture in this case. Okay, so that's just one way that you can use incidents to to identify what the cultural dynamics are. Now there's another tool that I want to demonstrate in regard to these, and it is on page, let's see. It is the next tool. It's on page 6, and it's called handout 2, and it's the barriers. It's these barriers, okay? Are you all with me with the barriers? All right, looking at the case, let's use case 5, the language one, where the person thinks the other person can speak Spanish, but the other person doesn't. That would be, in addition to the aspects of culture that we just dealt with, that would also be the language barrier on this handout with this particular tool. You see these? There's verbal behavior, that's language, so that would fit with what we just analyzed with that number 5 case example. And do you see any other barriers? Aha, what do you see with number 2? Number 2 would also apply to that case. And why do you say that? In what way would it apply to that case?
Well, because they're questioning, why can't you understand English?
Yeah, right, exactly. So there you can see you can identify barriers with this listing. There may be, let's go back and do another case example and see how other barriers apply. All right, choose another case and identify one barrier that you see in the case in addition to language, if you see language in your case. Because I want you to see maybe judgment or stress or stereotyping. We all stereotype unless we have accurate information about different groups and people. Okay, take a minute or two and identify what barriers you see.
Number 3.
All right, the third barrier, stereotypes. All right, stereotypes involves misinformation, missing information, overgeneralizing, and then stereotypes provide the psychological permission for differential treatment or discrimination. Okay, so you see that. And which case are you seeing?
Number 3.
Oh, that's right. You said number 3. Okay, so this is the one where she's running to an assist call, huh? And she gets there and they say, no, we don't want you, we want a man. And because they are stereotyping. Yeah. I mean, after you have children and you're lifting, I can lift a lot of things still. They're crawling all over you and you're carrying them, right? So, that's the way it is. So we do develop muscles. Just because we're women doesn't mean we can't lift things. Plus, a lot of places are required to have tools for lifting things. Not that they do it necessarily, but they're supposed to for occupational safety. Okay, let's do another one. Let's do one more with the barriers, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about the communication skills that are a part of this 4 skills approach to dealing with cultural differences in communication. So choose another one and tell me what barrier you see in it. Okay? Can someone tell us which case example and then which barrier or barriers you saw in the case example? Someone have, okay, here. Which case did you talk about?
Number 2.
2, okay, you want to read that so everyone can hear it? Or, oh no, this is the one about the child at school, okay. Yeah, everybody got that, okay.
Stress.
Okay, so the stress barrier, who do you think is feeling it in that case?
Or case number 2.
In case number 2, the people in there are experiencing stress, both as being a student as well as a staff person, you think?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Do you see any other barriers in there?
Non-verbal behavior.
Yeah, nonverbal behavior, absolutely. And why do you say that? What do you think?
Because he's a child from Haiti.
Yeah, from a child, okay. From Haiti, okay. And have we thought of social group interaction patterns? Again, we're dealing with 2 different cultures, the child from Haiti and possibly Euro-American or another culture of the staff person. Because they would know that a child wouldn't know how to function if they're new to that school, especially if they're an immigrant. They have layers of learning to do, which is another part of this training that I provide information on if we had more time. But today I'm just demonstrating some tools that you can use to communicate more effectively and understand better. It's called holistic thinking and culturally centered communication are the tools I've developed to deal with these. Now, keeping in mind these case examples, I'm going to show you another skill that we use, and this is specifically for communicating. And it's 14 competency behaviors. When I was doing this training and I would be out in the community as well as in my classes with Kelsey and Fullerton, people said, okay, we're supposed to show respect, but what does it look like if you're culturally skilled or culturally competent? And cultural competence, by the way, does not mean expertise. It means that you can communicate effectively to learn together with people. And if you're in a work site or a school site, you're working together to get things done. Okay? Some people think cultural competence means you have to learn all about that other culture. Well, you do through communication and working with people one person at a time, through showing respect and working collaboratively. So it doesn't have to do with expertise so much as being able to work effectively with people and learn about how they live and their values and so on. And that's what these competencies are. And let me just say what we use the competencies for, and then we're going to go back and identify some competencies in those case examples that would improve the situation, diffuse it, or even prevent it. Okay? So these are the foundation. Again, people said, what does it look like to be culturally skilled? What is cultural competence? So I took a year as I was teaching and such, and these are the very behaviors. Practicing being non-judgmental, being flexible, being resourceful. And the information on these should be in your packet on page, thank you, 7. Very good. Thank you so much. Okay, now let's go back to the case example. And choose a case and talk with people next to you for just a few minutes, and 2 competency behaviors that could have improved or even prevented if it's the child in line, for example, or the number 5, speaking Spanish and not speaking Spanish. So choose one, and what 2 competency behaviors that can improve the interactions in that case example, if you would, please.
Okay. Well, it's up there too.
Let's talk about what you just did with the competency behaviors and the case examples. Okay, we're going to take number 5. You folks have volunteered. Now, what competency behaviors would improve that situation?
We have the,
Can you speak? Oh, where's that? Yeah, there it is. Okay, very good.
we picked case number 5,
Okay.
and to improve this case, we choose to be non-judgmental, because obviously the situation was the person assumed that person speaks Spanish. Obviously, she doesn't know how to speak Spanish. So being a non-judgmental could have prevented that problem. And then the second one was to show respect, because of that situation. That even though she thinks that she speaks Spanish, and even though she doesn't speak Spanish, that you still have to be respectful for that person.
Exactly. So that demonstrates then what we do with these case examples. So now we're going to build on this, and we use those same competency behaviors for problem solving. And to problem solve, again, you're working with people, and so you have to have good communication. And I call that, here's the competency behaviors. Right here is the dialogue process. The competency behaviors are the foundation for effective dialogue. So let's look at the dialogue process. Here's the case example. Oh, shoot. It's in your packet, I'm sorry. Okay, in your packet on pages, there you go. Thank you so much for helping me with this. Okay, 8 has the dialogue and conflict recovery and problem solving. The only point is, you can work with this, and the most important part of it is you adapt it to your style. Okay, I put it in 1, 2, 3, 4 steps. Same with problems, conflict recovery on page 9, and then there's problem solving on page 10. All of these are useful if you adapt them to your style, and the competency behaviors are the foundation for doing that, okay? And so, in working together on problem solving, the next piece would be action planning. It's like problem solving. You engage in dialogue, and what we essentially do with case examples and action planning is you have a case, such as those that were on the list, and then you work together problem solving using dialogue to talk with each other and then go through the steps of analyzing what's happening in this case and what can we do about it. The first step is what aspects of culture are in the case. Then you discuss what barriers are in the case. And then you move to, I have in your packet also, there are strategies that organizations can use, because it's very important at the personal and interpersonal level, wherever we are, in order to communicate this way with respect, because that's what this is, and that's what anthropology teaches. What do we do in anthropology? We live with people to understand their way of life or their culture. Well, I couldn't because I have 4 kids. So I work in organizations because these things came to me. Remember the department chair of anthropology saying, because I was always doing community activism, working in teen pregnancy prevention and fair housing and such like that. So he knew I was always in the community working, and that's why he gave me that project, and I started a certificate program at Cal State Fullerton on managing in multicultural work environments, it was called. That was in the 90s. But I've been working with this, and I've written the workbook and so on. And so that's what this is. It's 4 skills, and the 4th skill is working together to problem solve, called action planning. And that's on pages, you'll probably tell me, it's on page 11. 11 has the organization-wide strategies. And so we would work together, as I said, and that would be the culminating part of it, is what organization strategies can we use to make the organization such a place that we have supports for people and that they all feel respected and supported so that they can get their job done, or whatever job it is that they're doing in this situation. Okay? So that is what I can present today. It's just now time for me to stop. But you have a taste of it. I'm sorry I couldn't walk you through all 4 skills, because that's what we do in a regular training of 4 hours about, and people actually leave with an action plan. And it shows you how to proactively, using a strengths approach with respect as the core, to problem solve together across our differences. Okay, so thank you.